Hey, it's Ashley and I'm back with another haircut tutorial. If you don't know me, I'm a 9-year licensed cosmetologist and barber. I own a barber shop in southern Louisiana, and I've been making educational haircut tutorials to help educate new and experienced licensed cosmetologists and barbers who have a passion for men's hair. So today we're going to be focused on how to cut a bald fade. Now, I start by combing out my client's hair and checking the hair and skin for any imperfections. And then I go in with my number 3 guard and remove a lot of bulk. This is going to be a mid-bald fade, so I am going to bring that number 3 onto the parietal ridge to really set my standard for how high I want to bring this fade up later on. And it's going to be a lot easier for me to go in and blend with my clipper over comb or my shear over comb. So again, I'm going in with that number 3 and I'm debulking this hair right at the parietal ridge, and I am scooping out really well so that I can go in and blend everything afterwards. So again, I'm moving with the hair growth and just kind of flicking my wrist back and forth when I'm getting to the exact area I want to stop. You definitely want to make sure that you are noticing where the teeth are at on your clippers and not really following the comb itself. So going in with no guard, clippers completely closed, this is a 0. I am starting right above the ear, probably about an inch or 2 above the ear. And I'm really going right underneath the area on the temple of his hairline. That point, I like to stay a little bit below that, and this is just me coming in and really setting a guideline. So you can see a little more detail here as I get to the edge of that hairline. I'm kind of stopping and then following through behind the ear. Now you can see as I'm going in and getting to the top of that area that I want to stop at, I am curving out my clippers so that I am not making a very big dent in there. And then I'm going to go back in and clean up everything else around the ear and around the neck and make sure that everything is zeroed out completely before I move on to fading. So I opened up my clippers to a half guard, and now I'm going in and going all the way around, fading out this line and touching everything to that number 3. So I'm just going to go in starting at the temple where I created my guideline with my 0 guard and tapping that half on the line. And so I'm going to do this a few times to make sure that I have an easy seamless blend whenever I'm going in with my half guard itself. Now when I use my half guard, I don't like to use it completely closed because I notice it kind of messes up my fade between my 0 and my half on my clippers itself. So before I close my half all the way and get out any other lines, I make sure I open it, and then I move on to my number 1 guard, and that is completely closed, and I'm just going right back where I started that zeroed out fade, and above that line I'm going to just tap, and every time I'm creating about a half of an inch of a difference. So every time I'm moving up a step in my clippers, I'm going in about a half of an inch of a difference. Now, sometimes it's not as dramatic, like whenever I am on the occipital ridge, I am going to have a little bit more space compared to whenever I am on the crown of the head. But for the most part, we're going to continue to just half of an inch raise this fade to that number 3. So we started with that 0 close, and now we're at a 1.5. So our 1 guard open. And then grabbing that 1.5 guard, we're going to put it on our clippers and we're going to continue to fade back into that number 3. So again, I'm going to go all the way around the head. And if you've watched my other video, you know that I like to open my clippers once I get to the other side and then fade back, change out my clipper. So I start on one side, 1.5 guard closed, and then I get to that other side and I open my 1.5 guard and I fade back around so that I can get back to my tools to switch out my guard. This saves me a lot of time walking back and forth. And depending on the client's head shape, you're going to go ahead and double check the fade and where you are now, and you should start to tap into that number 3 where it would go into that number 2 really seamless. Now I'm going to clean off my client, double check my work before moving on to my trimmers and cleaning up the client's hairline and neck. So starting off at the hairline, I'm going to create my C shape for the sideburns, and then I'm going to start around the ear and carve out the back of the ear and make sure they meet up. And then from the back of the ear, I bring that line down and clean everything around the neck. Same thing for the other side. I'm going to start at the back of that ear to bring my line down, curve around the ear, and then come to that front part of the ear and clean up the sideburns, creating that C shape really nice on the hairline. It's going to create just a really nice look. I am not going into the client's hairline itself. I am just cleaning up what is naturally there. So after that, I'm going to take my shaver just to get everything super crisp on the neckline, and we're just going to clean it up, moving your shaver kind of in a C-shaped motion, almost like you're making circles to get the cleanest effect. You also want to make sure everything is cut down before going in with the shaver. So that is my cleanup. Now I'm finished with that part, and we're going to go on to our third step in our haircut, which is wetting everything down and shear cutting the top. So I prefer to blend everything with my shear over comb and my hands because I'm a cosmetologist at heart, even though I love barbering and have always been in the barbering industry since receiving my cosmetology license. So starting off, I'm going to find the parietal ridge and that number 3 and just grab my comb and shears, and anything that sticks out from that number 3, I'm going to cut off parallel with the head as I'm moving slowly in an upward motion towards the ceiling. So as you can see, I'm pulling up that hair. I find my number 3 guard, it falls out, and I cut the hair that is on top. This is going to cause everything that's hanging over and not blending to really seamlessly just fade in. And then I'm going to start working the hair from more of the back of the head towards the front, making sure that everything is blended in. After I go parallel, I like to cross-check my haircut on the side before moving on to the next step. So I'm going to pull everything to my hands so that I can make sure it meets with that number 3 guard. And this is kind of like cross-checking. And I'm also going to work my way slightly up in this haircut to the crown of the head off of the parietal ridge. Now, this is going to set up myself for whenever I get to the top of the head and make my middle section. I can make sure everything I cut on the top meets out to this side area. So this side area really matters when you're blending your haircut in because it's going to definitely affect how the top of your haircut's going to look and blend. So I'm making sure to just check everything, and I'm always moving my comb and my shears when I'm cutting the hair so that I'm not leaving any lines in it and everything is just really seamless. Blending in the back of the hair, I'm going to do the exact same thing, and then I come back and just double check everything, making sure there's no corners left over in this haircut. Now for the other side of the haircut, I'm going to blend just like I did. I'm going to start parallel with the head, and I'm going to brush everything over, combing it to that number 3 guard, and then cutting anything that's falling out of my comb above that. I'm also going to pull it over and up so that I can make sure it's all blending, and I'm cutting off any corners that are overhanging this number 3 guard. Once you have everything blended with shear over comb and you're making sure that nothing's overhanging on your sides from that number 3 guard, you're going to go ahead and start working on your top. Now, we're going to start at the bangs, and we're going to cut to our desired length that we want our bangs to sit at. I'm taking about 1 inch off of my client's bangs. Now, after I'm cutting these bangs in the middle, I pull them from both sides and make sure that I'm following my middle cut. I am using my comb to pull down my bangs, and if the hair is not going to sit with it on top of the bangs, I'm going to make sure that I'm pulling that comb and cutting them right when they come out from under the comb. So my guide is set at my bangs. I have to create a guide for the crown of my head. Now I'm going to start that by pulling out my bangs and cutting to length in my mohawk section. This is going to go all the way to the back of the head where we blended our number 3 guard. So once I have that guide created, this client has a really nice hairline, so I can just go ahead and blend everything to that mohawk section starting from the bangs. So I am slowly pulling back in about 4 sections on the crown of the head, all the way down to the mohawk. And you can see I'm using a technique of both point cutting and just blunt cutting. So I'm pulling everything out to that mohawk section and making sure it blends. Now, once I've cut that side, I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side, pulling out from my mohawk section and cutting the hair in sections, pulling backwards towards the back of the head. I'm going to blend that all the way to that mohawk section until I get down to where I blended that number 3 garden, and then I should have a really nice seamless blended haircut. Once I finish that step, there should be about 1 corner left over, which is between the parietal ridge and your last area cutting the crown. I'm going to go ahead and knock this down, especially because the client pushes his hair over to the side I'm working on now, so it will tend to be a lot heavier than his other side. Also, if we want more of a feathered look on our other side, we would pull it out a little bit further and keep it more circle. But in this case, that is not necessary. Once finished cutting the hair, I am going to wash my client's hair, blow dry it, and make sure that everyone is satisfied and that there are no lines that need to be fixed in this haircut or on the top of the head. Now, when blow drying hair, I am going to blow dry in the direction that I want to style my client's hair. So if he pushes it over to his right, then I am going to blow dry that hair going in that direction. After that, I'm going to take a wax because my client has more blonde, finer hair. So this is going to give him some texture and some volume, keeping it in place. I really like this haircut and my client was pretty satisfied. So let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much.